Have you ever wondered what makes a man sure that he really wants to wife you? But wouldn't it be impossible to be sure that you look like wifey material if you don't know what he's testing you on in order to get that answer? Well, what if I told you it could be easy to pass these tests as long as I slide you all the answers? Which is exactly why on today's show we're going to be discussing how to pass every wife test so men fall in love with you. That way you know exactly how to present yourself so that you can receive the queen and wife treatment you've always wanted. What do I actually mean when I say not like other women? One of the common things that you might have said, and you can tell me in the chat if you've ever said this when you're on a date, right? You're gonna say things like, oh, well, we're not gonna sleep together because you don't wanna present yourself as trashy, as sleazy, right? I'm not trashy, I'm not sleazy, I'm not like any of those other girls. You'll even say something like, I have class. That sounded great at the beginning, but you wanna know what is a learned behavior for men? They learn over the course of time that if they just ignore that chat that you're gonna give them, that speech you're gonna give them at the beginning, and they focus on setting the right vibe, a lot of times they'll come to the realization after a while that even though you said you weren't, you're just like all the other women. And what do all the other women do in this case? They sleep with men on the very first date. You don't wanna make the mistake of talking up a big game, and especially as it relates to you not being like the other women who are trashy, sleazy, that will sleep with him on this very first date, and then end up doing anything with him on that very first date. And let me let you in on a little bit of a secret, because I know some of you don't realize this when we're talking about not being like the other girl. See, you might even come on this very first date, and you might talk about how you're not like any of these other women, and how you're not gonna do this and you're not gonna sleep with him, because that's just not what you do. But you end up still doing things with him at his place or at your place later on. It just doesn't end up in the total, him actually inserting himself inside of you and jackrabbing himself inside of you, okay, right? So you guys don't actually sleep together, but you still end up doing things, whether you put your mouth on things, you put your feet on things, you use your hands, he uses his hands, and we end up in the same place eventually, even though it's not actually, pineapples and you guys actually having sex, it's still the same idea where you're presenting yourself as saying, I'm so different from everyone else that you're gonna meet. I'm not like any of these other women. Don't put me in that category. Don't think of me that way. I'm different. Because remember, you're trying to stand out and you're trying to present yourself as a wife. But when you go back on that because of the vibes, okay, this is the problem. Some of you love vibes so much that when you get to a place with a guy where you feel there are a lot of vibes, you throw everything out the window that you are working towards in terms of presenting yourself the right way that he can take you seriously as a wife, okay? And this is an issue. We want to make sure when you go out on this first date, in order to pass this very first wife test, that you're truly not like the other girls. You must take a hard stance against doing anything sexual with him. Because trust you me, I'm telling you this as a guy. All these other women in this category, they also come on that very first date talking up a big game. So don't think that you're the first one who talks up a big game about how you're not going to do this and you're not going to do that. It's not a flex to sleep with him on the first night and then wake up the next day and say, oh, the vibes were just so good, that's why I did it. Or I never do this. This was only the first time. I guarantee you, as soon as you start talking with that rhetoric, you're going to get clustered in with all these other girls and he's not going to take you very seriously. He might pretend to take you seriously, but I promise you it's going to be very difficult for him to actually take you seriously after that, okay? By the time you start having a really good vibe with him and things are going really well, you will now have a choice here, which is to end the date or go back to his place, right? And when I say go back to his place, it's just some sort of, it can even be anything related to that, whether it be going back to his place, going back to your apartment or your place, if you're more comfortable there, going back to a hotel, whatever the case may be, the nightcap, we'll just call it like that. This is the thing, and this is the choice that you're going to make that's going to be pivotal in the way that you present yourself. And it's honestly one of the tests that men are going to use. At the very beginning, this choice, especially when you come on this first date with a planned course of action, what does that mean? That first date that you go on is only supposed to last about 2 hours, right? You're not supposed to be going on these marathon dates. We've talked about that in previous shows, okay? You don't go on 8, 9-hour dates with men, not even 4 or 5-hour dates. When you're starting off at the beginning, you start off slow and you go on 2-hour dates maximum with men, so that you can get to know them a little bit better, but they can continue to crave you and desire you and ask you out on more dates. But here's the problem. You come to that date with an understanding of what the itinerary is. We'll say it like that, meaning what the expectation of how long you'll be there, how long it'll take you to get there, and when you're gonna go back home. But when you get on this date, influence can be a very dangerous thing. Men are also gauging how easy it is to influence you to do something that you didn't originally intend to do, okay? Because when you get to this crossroads here and it's time to make a choice to say, am I gonna stick to the itinerary and my plan for the date that it was supposed to be 2 hours? Or is his vibe, the wine, the ambiance, the food, the everything that's going on in between us gonna convince me to go against what my standard or expectation was for this date and say, you know what, now that I'm feeling the vibe, forget what I said about the 2-hour date. Me and you, we can go back to your place. You can come back to my apartment. We can just chill. I'll let it go a little bit. I'll relax a little bit because clearly you're a cool guy. You're a nice guy and you're not like any of the other guys. When you start acting and saying that, the guys start rubbing their hands like Birdman. They're like, oh yeah, I got her. Only took me a couple of hours to take her from being a drill sergeant. And now all of a sudden she's softening up. She's feeling the vibe and all the stuff she was talking about. I'm so different. You can't treat me a certain way. I have a certain that's all out the window. Once we get back to my place, I'll give her the backwash vodka that's left over in my place from the last time we pre-gamed, and I'll be in there in no time, okay? That's what he's thinking in his mind, but it's not good for you and your presentation. Similar to talking about I'm not like the other girls when we're talking about you sleeping with him or not sleeping with him. In this scenario, right, it's about influence. How easily are you influenced, especially at the beginning? It's so important to understand there's a way to say no and turn down men in a feminine way. Doesn't have to mean you come on the date and you tell him, this is going to be exactly 2 hours. I'm starting my timer now. And when the timer goes off, I'm standing up, running away and driving my car off, right? But it's understanding no matter how good the vibe is, no matter how much I'm enjoying this, no matter how deep the connection feels when we're having conversation, I'm still not going to go back on my word that I said this date is gonna last 2 hours. So once 2 hours comes by, I don't care what we're talking about, I don't care what's going on, I'm gonna let him know that I've gotta be home, and he's gonna beg me, he's gonna say, please stay, I want you to stay, I want you to be here, we're having such a good vibe, just finish your last glass of wine, let's order another appetizer, let's order dessert. You still go home. Because I promise you, only good things can happen when you make this choice to end the date and you don't allow him to influence you to do something different than what you intended to do from the very beginning. Because make no mistake about it, you're showing him a lot by making that choice. And the reason I say only good things can come from that is because when you end that date early, especially if you end that date early and he wants to see you more or spend more time with you, what do you think you're gonna go home, what he's gonna go home with the feeling of? He's gonna go home with the feeling of, damn, I wanna see more of her. I wanna speak to her more. I wanna get to know her more. That didn't feel like enough. And subsequently, he has more of a desire to ask you out on another date in very rapid succession. So let's imagine in this scenario for this timeline, these are the days counting down until the date that you guys are gonna go on, right? So on day 3, let's say he asks you, in 3 days, can we go out to this sushi restaurant? I love it. It's my favorite Japanese sushi restaurant. I would love to go with you and take you out there and experience that with you. You're like, sure, I have a time and space on this day coming up in 3 days. We can go out at 6 p.m. like you suggested, and I'll be good with that. And then the next day comes and he has said nothing. Doesn't text you, doesn't call you, doesn't say anything to you the entire day. You're like, okay, guess he's been busy, had work, or whatever it was that he was doing. And then the next day, right, now we're talking about 24 hours before, he still hasn't messaged you from 2 days ago. And 24 hours before this date, he's still no word. When I say no word, I mean no messages, no check-ins, no reminder of, hey, you on for the date tomorrow? We're still good for the date tomorrow? Nothing. And let's say, for the sake of example, this is something that you've had a discussion with him is not cool with you, that you don't appreciate. Because when you're planning and scheduling for your week, even though you schedule something in your week to plan this date or whatever it is that you guys are going to, you like and feel the most comfortable when he can confirm with you, especially when we're getting into 24 hours before, that we're still on for the date, we still have the same understanding, and the schedule is still the same, right? Let's say you've had that conversation with him previously about the fact that that's something that you want. Now, when it comes to setting boundaries, this is where the test happens. Because now, inadvertently, right, he's not necessarily doing it purposely, but this is a time where he's going to test to see, what are you going to do in your response to him crossing a boundary that you've already set? This is where it gets very, very sticky. Because some of you will be inclined to say, well, I really like this guy, and I really want this relationship to work out with him. And I don't mind the fact that even though it makes me more comfortable if he were to confirm with me at least 24 hours before, even though he hasn't said anything, I'll still get ready, and hopefully he'll send me a message a couple of hours before and I'll already be ready, even though it makes me a little bit uneasy. This is a problem though, because when you set the boundary at the beginning and you told him you didn't appreciate that, there needs to be a consequence for him crossing the boundary. Even if you're like, but Tomisin, I don't want to be a drama queen. I don't want to be difficult. He asked me out on a date. He set the time and the place and the everything. Why do I have to be such a drill sergeant all the time? This is the thing. You need to show men that when you set a boundary, you will enforce it even if it's small. And especially when it's small at the beginning, because that's the perfect way to show him if he crossed a bigger boundary, the punishment would just be on a larger scale. Okay, so what do I mean by that? In this scenario where he gives you no word 2 days before, no word 24 hours before, and he doesn't send you a text until an hour before you guys were supposed to meet at that sushi restaurant, and he's like, hey, are you ready to go? Right? I'm about to be there, or I'm about to leave in a couple of minutes. Then you text him back and say, I'm not going anymore. And he's going to say, wait, what? Why aren't you going anymore? What's the problem? I'm about to get ready. I'm about to be over at your place in just a little bit. And then you can let him know, look, I talked to you about confirming with me at the very least 24 hours before. There was no check-in. I heard nothing from you. And I'm not going to plan and get ready for a date when I can't even confirm that it's still happening. Simple as that. This might feel painful to some of you who find it difficult to set boundaries, but it's a very, very important lesson to teach men. Because part of this test is to see if you're actually gonna follow through with the punishment. And the follow through with the punishment and the enforcing of the boundary is the only thing that will stick into his mind. Oh, when she actually says something is a boundary, she's actually going to enforce it if I cross it. I know it sounds very strange because you're thinking, well, why doesn't he care so much that he would just follow the instructions the first time and not do what I said I didn't appreciate? Unfortunately, I don't make the rules, but I can explain them to you. And in this scenario, when it comes to men, they only truly understand what you really mean when they feel it. Because when he gets all ready and dresses himself up and gets his nice fit and puts his cologne on, his Dior Savage, your man probably wears Dior Savage, right? He comes out and he goes to this date and he's driving and he sees you're actually not coming to the date anymore. And the disappointment he feels in getting ready and spending all that time planning and scheduling just so he can go out on this date knowing that he's not going anymore. The disappointment he feels will actually be able to put into his memory that next time when he's planning a date, he'll make sure to confirm. So you're at the snack machine and you're seeing this snack machine here that has a lot of nice, amazing snacks. And they're $5 each, quite an expensive snack machine, but who cares, right? You're in a nice, rich part of town, all right? You like rich men and rich vibes. Now, when you're getting a snack from this snack machine and you input a $5 bill, you're like, damn, okay, $5 for a snack, but I'm pretty hungry. I don't just want one snack, I want 2 snacks, okay? And let's say you put in a $5 bill for the first snack that you get, and out comes, 1 snack for $5. But then, let's say for the sake of example, you're like, damn, I only have, a couple of 1s on me. Let me see how many I have. And you put 4 1s into the machine. And for some reason, after you put 4 1s in the machine, out comes another snack. And you're like, wait a minute, I thought all the snacks in here were $5. Huh, I just put in 4, I swear. Then you're like, okay, I see I still got some extra change in here. Maybe let's just see how many I have to put in to get a snack out. And then you put in a $1 bill and out comes another snack. And you're like, wait a second. Every time I put in money, it gives me a snack no matter what price I put in the machine. And then you're like, wait a second. I wonder. And you take out your wallet again or your purse and you grab a penny, a single penny. And you put it in the machine and out comes one snack again, right? When you put in the 1 penny. Now, what am I getting at here? See, when you realize that it only takes any amount of money to put into your vending snack machine here and get out the same snack that you were wanting from the beginning, eventually you get to a point where you say, why would I continue putting in $5 when I can just put in 1 penny and get out the same snack? So it's the same thing with men and their relationship with you, right? Standards are so important because standards set an expectation for what you expect men to do for you in order to get access from you, I should say. And that standard and those expectations will show a man whether you are a woman who has self-respect and value or whether you're a woman without self-respect and without value. Why does it do that? Because they understand that only women who actually have value and recognize their own value will have a standard so high and be so strict on that standard that they don't allow anything to come below that threshold. Because they understand that if one man is not willing to meet that threshold, then that definitely means one of their plenty of other options will desire to meet that threshold or exceed it, and they will be the one to be with her or have access to her. And so because there's so much competition for her, she has no intention of lowering her standard because she doesn't need to. If one man can't meet it, then another man will. And while you don't need to have 1,000 different options or 1,000 different men DMing you in order to present yourself this way and to have the same effect, right? It's very important that you know how to set standards and keep them there. You also know how to interact with men and approach men if they're not meeting that standard. And when I say that, what I mean by that is you know how to properly withdraw from men who are not meeting your standards, right? An example of that would be, let's say a guy is asking you out on a first date. This is the first time you guys are supposed to be meeting each other in person. And the first time he's basically asking you to hang out and spend time with you, he's saying, hey, so you want to come to my place and we can watch that series that we were talking about on Netflix? We can watch Squid Game season 2 together. I know you love Squid Game. And that is his version of asking you to hang out for the very first time. You've never met him in person, and he wants to watch Squid Game with you at his place. And your response has to be no. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to scream and yell. You don't have to tell him, I expect you to do this and I expect you to do that. I expect you to. No. You just tell him, no thanks, and leave it at that. And unless he comes up with a better idea than to ask you to come over and watch Squid Game 2, you're going to continue to say, no thanks. And if he can't think to himself, maybe she's saying no thanks because I'm asking her for a low quality hangout and putting in very little investment, right? If he can't put that together and realize he needs to fix up and change his approach to meet your standard, then he's not even the type of man that you're looking for anyways. Because you shouldn't have to beg a guy to meet your standard. And you also shouldn't even want to beg a guy to meet your standard, because the way you're supposed to be carrying yourself is that any man that you come across will be gladly happy to meet your standards. So if this guy can't, then another guy will. I know it feels a little bit toxic to walk around with that level of confidence and arrogance, I guess you could say. But at the same time, that's actually what men find attractive in the woman that they take seriously. Because when you have standards, it communicates that you also have value. Because you couldn't have standards if you didn't have value. And vice versa, when you communicate to men that you don't have standards, or you're willing to throw away your standards to be with them or spend time with them, it communicates to them that you don't have value. Which is why I want you to say no to everything he could possibly offer you that does not meet explicitly what your standards are. The reason I call it crashing out right? Or the reason it's called crashing out, I didn't make up the terminology, but the reason it's called crashing out is because you're so emotionally unstable and this man matters so much to you that any inconvenience as it relates to him and this relationship will throw you so far out of whack that you end up going insane. You're like a crazy person. You chase him around for things, you spam call him, you check up on his location 24/7, you question him like the FBI about everything that he's doing, you watch him like a hawk, you watch each and every one of his stories, and you look at every individual pixel, and then you call him out. Stop. Stop it. I'm not saying don't peep things. I'm not saying don't be aware of what's going on. But your response is very, very important, okay? When you crash out like this, you're actually showing a lot of emotional immaturity, number one. And you're showing men that you can't actually moderate your emotions, right? There's nothing wrong with feeling things. There's nothing wrong with being upset. But your response to being upset will tell him a lot about your level of emotional maturity. Also, you'll get relegated when you become a crash out to a source of entertainment. What do I mean by that? Because men realize it's an ego boost when you do that to them. Because you want to know what they do, and I'll tell you a little secret, maybe you didn't know this. But when you crash out on men, and especially if he's around his boys, he actually shows them the fact that you're crashing out on him. And he likes to use that as a way to make everyone laugh and also show that he really put it down on you. Because only girls who got that D put down on them would crash out like this. And that's how men actually receive that type of energy. So then he's like, oh, guys, look. She crashing out again. She called him. This is the 15th time she called him. He'll put his phone on speaker, right, in the car so all of them can hear you cursing him out, going crazy. And you might think you're like, why would guys do that? That's really stupid. Why would they do that? Because it's a source of entertainment. And it's an ego boost for them. You don't understand. Men aren't receiving that how you think they're receiving that, right? It's actually pretty funny because they know that the only type of girls that will go crazy like that are girls that have been dickmatized, as we like to say, okay? Which just means mesmerized by the pee-pee, right? And so when men think like that, and they receive this type of attention, this type of crash out attention that way, you don't realize you're actually doing a good thing for his ego. But you're not doing a good thing for yourself because you're showing him how little you're able to regulate your emotions, okay? And you're showing him how if he were to be in a relationship with you, it would be like this all the time. Where anything he does, he'll be watched like a hawk, and your response will be to spam him, curse him out, scream and yell, and be a very toxic person. Make no mistake about it. Men find that entertaining, yes. Do they want to be in a long-term serious relationship with that? No. And the only type of men that would even possibly want to be in a relationship like that are men who are so emotionally damaged themselves that they get joy out of being in a toxic relationship because they have nothing else to put their time and energy into. The wife, if let's say she sees something that she doesn't like, she responds with withdrawal. Now, what do I mean by lets him come to her? What does that actually mean in terms of like how you go about things? When you withdraw as a wife, see, you can be upset in a feminine way. What I mean by that is when you're upset and you feel that anger, you feel that sadness, it's still okay to express that and it's okay to talk about that with your friends. But what you show him, what I want you to show him is withdrawal. Because men understand that coldness and that distance emotionally from you to be like, oh, something has happened and this is bad. I must have done something really bad. They're also pretty intelligent beings. So when they do something bad, they know they've done something bad. And when you withdraw, it enforces the idea to them that they've done something bad. So now when you withdraw, he's more inclined, because he's supposed to be your man and your happiness is supposed to be important to him, he's more inclined to say, hey, what's wrong? What's bothering you? Are you okay? Did I do something? Did I say something? Then you respond with communication of your feelings, right? But it's very important in your communication, you understand how to address without, I'll just say, going crazy. And this is a learned skill, I'll be honest with you. It's not something you're gonna gain overnight, especially if you find it difficult to calm yourself down when you're really, really upset. For some of you, you're gonna have to build up your strategy in order to be able to address men when you're upset with them in a way that actually helps you find solutions and addresses your problems rather than creating more of an issue, okay? And I'm not saying this to hurt your feelings or be mean to you, but this is such an important part of men also seeing whether or not you're able to properly resolve conflict. And make no mistake about it, whether a man is healthy or whether he's unhealthy, you will still have conflict with that individual. It's just inevitable as two individuals. Now, it's important that he's able to see your way of resolving conflict is actually sustainable. So what I mean by that is a crash out will, by the time you resolve conflict, the crash out has thrown your computer out the window. The crash out has burned your clothes. The crash out has looked through your laptop and messaged a whole bunch of girls. The crash out called your mom, had the police called, broke your door, broke a window. That's unsustainable. And if conflict only gets resolved after all of those things get broken and torn apart in the relationship, that's not a sustainable way to resolve conflict. Now, vice versa, in response to issues or conflict, and the way that the wife resolves it by understanding how to regulate her emotions, still be upset, still be angry, nothing wrong with having the emotion, but understanding how to go about it in a way that actually can help resolve the situation and actually help address whatever your problem is so important to showing men that you are a healthy partner capable of being in a healthy, sustainable relationship, okay? And I know some of you are thinking, well, the men I date aren't even mature anyway, so why should I bother being mature? This is about passing the wife test for whoever you date. That way, when you finally do meet a mature, amazing, emotionally stable, and forward direction moving man, you can make sure that you tick off all his boxes because you're not so, built up from all the toxic relationships that you've had, that you carry a lot of it into your new one with a healthy man, right? In this calendar here, let's imagine that you guys are supposed to go on a date on this day, right? So let's just say this is a Wednesday and this is a date day. And let's say for the rest of your week, you have this day that you're doing something, this day that you're doing something, this day, and every other day of the week, you essentially have something planned for that week, okay? Or something going on at a time where it makes it impossible for you guys to go out on a date. This is the day that you guys are supposed to plan to go out on this date. Now, let's say the Tuesday comes here and he reaches out to you and he says, by the way, for our date on Wednesday, I'm gonna need to cancel because I have an emergency thing that I have to go to. It's a family thing and I can't miss it. And so I'm not gonna be able to go out on this date on Wednesday. But could you maybe, since you work shift work, and you know my job's a full-time job, I can't really do anything about that. But since you work shift work, you're a nurse, right? Could you possibly, cancel your shift on the Thursday so that we can go out on this day instead? It's very important that you make sure to handle this properly because you don't want to make the mistake of over-investing yourself, especially too early. What does that look like in this scenario? It looks like canceling your shift where you're supposed to make money so that you can spend time with this guy. You should not be doing that for any reason whatsoever, especially at the very beginning of your dating stage with a guy, okay? If he can't see you because he has to cancel the date on this day, that doesn't magically mean you're gonna do something drastic to free up your schedule the next couple of days. No. That means if the next Tuesday is the only day you guys can go out on a date because your schedule is booked for the next week, then so be it. Or if it's gonna be another 2 weeks before you guys can go out on another date because you got so much planned and it's just not gonna work out, then so be it. You do not change or adjust yourself for the man that you just started dating. And I know it sounds very toxic for me to say that, but you have to show men, look, I'm free the days that I'm free. I have my things that I'm doing and I have my places that I have to be outside of that. I'm not just dating you. You're not just my entire world. If you can't make it or you have to cancel or whatever the case may be, I'm not holding it against you. However, I'm not going to overextend myself, change my schedule, cancel this, cancel that, cancel all the things that I wanted to do just because you can't make it to a date. And if you can't make it to a date or something comes up, that's perfectly fine. But then we will get to the next time I'm actually free before we can go out on this next date, okay? And I'm giving you that example because that's an example of how easy it can become to over-invest yourself in guys, especially very early on. because you have a desire for him to like you and for this relationship to work out, that you think to yourself, well, I need to make sure I do everything in my power for us to be able to see each other, for us to be able to spend time with each other, and for us to be able to go out on more dates. But that's actually the exact opposite of what you need to be doing, right? You need to be free when you are free and let him figure out how he's going to adjust himself to be a part of your life and to be a part of your schedule. If he can't do that, or he can't plan to do that, because here's the thing, and this is what I want you to understand about dating, and dating men specifically. See, men it's possible for them to be a part of your life, even if you're busy and they're busy. It just takes an extra amount of planning and scheduling. He'll figure out how to do that by planning so far ahead of time that you guys are both free, or at least more flexible, that you can actually insert a time to spend time together. And he'll always be about the business of making sure that he plans ahead enough with you that you guys can spend time with each other, instead of doing things like saying, hey, you want to go out on a date tomorrow? You want to go out on a date in 5 hours? You want to meet up here right now? Right? And he'll learn that in order to get time with you, that he has to work for it. And part of working for it is scheduling for it and planning for it. These are just some of the things that you guys are bringing to the table as individuals, right? As a man and a woman coming together. Now, this is the problem that some of you will face in your relationships. You will come across as so desperate that instead of requiring a man to bring anything to the table, right? His masculinity, his ability to protect, provide, his desire to help you with your problems and do things for you. Instead, all you will desire is for a man to love you. And you might not realize this, but this will come across and be very obvious to men. If you're one of these women, that all you need from a man is for him to love you and care about you and show you some attention, that you don't bother caring about any other quality in a man or in this relationship other than his ability to love you and show you some attention. You might think to yourself, well, Tomisin, I'm just a low maintenance type of woman. I don't require all this other stuff or extravagant gifts or money like all these other women. I'm not saying that you need to require that, but it's very important that your happiness is also factored in. So if there are certain things that you really want in a guy, in a husband, in a partner that are important to you, like maybe how often he communicates with you, maybe his attachment style, maybe how he resolves conflict with you, how he speaks to you. Maybe there's a certain way you like to be spoken to when you're in a fight, when you're in an argument, or there's a certain way you like to be dealt with overall. Maybe there's a certain way you like intimacy. Maybe you have a lot of kinks and you like to be thrown against the wall. Or you like to be chokeslammed. Whatever the case may be, right? It's very important that you also factor in, what are my preferences? What are the things that I like? What are the things that are important to me? What are the things that I need in a partner? And that should be also the things that you're looking for a man to bring to the table. The thing about it is, if you come across very desperate, you won't have anything that you need a man to bring to the table. So you won't have any standards and you won't have any expectation. That will bleed through your pores, or I should say that will like ooze through your pores, because that'll come across in the way that you talk about yourself, you talk about relationships, and you talk about your needs as well. Because make no mistake about it, as the relationship is going on, you are going to discuss your needs. You are going to discuss your preferences. You are going to communicate in your communication style, and you guys are going to go back and forth on the way that you approach relationships. Guys will get a sense of how you approach a relationship and what your expectation of a man is in a relationship after spending time with you. And once they spend enough time with you and they realize that you're so desperate that all you need and all you care about is for a man, any man, literally, if a homeless man could love you and show you some care, that's all you need. That's not good. That's not good. That doesn't communicate your value. That doesn't communicate that you're someone who has a lot of options. That communicates the entire opposite, that you're someone with no options, with no value, that everyone overlooks, and you're so desperate that you're willing to take in anyone that will show you any type of love. It's just very icky. It's very nasty. It pushes and repels men away from you. And as men are becoming pushed and repelled away from you, you'll become more and more desperate, and you'll become more and more needy for men to show you any sort of love and affection. So it's a vicious snowball effect. Do not ever make the mistake of showing men or making them feel like you deal with bums. I'm talking about the fact that you would date bums, that bums would have access to you, that bums can get you to answer your DMs, that bums could even dream of being able to touch you, okay? Now, I know for some of you, you've made the mistake of actually dating and being in a relationship with a bum. But the way I want you to paint that picture is that these bums do not have access to me, okay, right? You do not want to make the mistake of making it seem like bums still have access to you. Now, what do I mean when I say bums having access to you? When I'm describing bums, I mean men who are low quality, right? Who have nothing to offer and who would be very low on the totem pole in terms of men. So what does a bum actually look like? A man with no money, he's broke, no job, no ambition, no career goals, no success in life, plays video games, soy boy, shy, can't do anything, not courageous, not bold, ugly, disgusting, just nothing going for him. Dusty, so Coco said in the chat, right? Nothing going for him as a man. Very unsuccessful in every aspect of his life, okay? Still getting his mom to wash his underwear, right? Type of vibes. When men see that you allow those type of men to have access to you still, even after you've identified they're a bum, that is a very, very, very horrible look for you. Very horrible. Very horrible. Because what it'll show him, and this is why I drew him here, right? He's observing that. He's observing this and saying, I'm way better. And when he's observing that and thinking to himself, I'm way better, and he's seeing how all these bums get access to you, he automatically assumes if you allow bums to get access to you, and I'm not a bum, I'm so much better than all these bum men that get access to you, why am I taking you seriously? Why am I someone who has value? I'm attractive. I have money. I, am able to do things. I'm able to protect and provide. I'm handsome. I'm good looking. All the stuff that these men are not. And I'm with you. Why am I treating you the same way that those men are treating you? Because if I'm better than these men, I should treat you worse than those men treat you. So if I'm going to deal with you, then I should deal with you from a standpoint of just making you my side girl, or just making you someone that I smash on the side, whatever the case may be, or we're friends with benefits. Because he's thinking, I'm way better than these bums. I can't be on the same level as them by getting the same men as, or getting the same women as them. I said earlier, I know some of you have made the mistake of dealing with the bum, but this is the most important part of dealing with bums. When you identify they're a bum or the relationship is over or has run its course, you make sure that those type of men do not get to access you in any capacity whatsoever. Because we want to make sure that when your next man meets you that actually lives up to your standards and expectations, that he isn't discombobulated by the fact that your ex who's a bum can still actually message you and call you. If you're presenting yourself as someone who doesn't deal with bums, none of these bum exes that you're thinking of or men that you dealt with in the past that are bums should have any access to you. You might as well block them on every form of social media known to man, block their number, block their friend's number if you need to, block their Facebook, block everything, block their LinkedIn, so that when you come to this date and eventually when he starts seeing how, you approach dating and things like that, and you start eventually describing your previous relationships, because at some point it's going to come up, you can make sure to describe it as, oh, no. Bum men, they can't touch me. Not a chance. No. Yeah, even my ex, no, I don't care. We were together for a couple of years. Yep, he didn't show up hot. Nope, no. He can't text me. He can't call me. I don't care if he's dying, nothing. But that's good. I know it will make you feel mean, but that's good, right? Because when you set that boundary like that, you're setting a separation between you and bum men, right? When you set that separation emotionally between you and bum men, right? He starts to feel like, oh, okay, we on the same level. I'm dealing with a woman who doesn't deal with low value men. So that must mean inherently I'm a high value man. You're also doing something for his ego at that point by actually being with him, knowing that you don't mess with bums, because you're showing him that, hey, none of these bums get access to me. So if you're getting access to me, that must mean you're one of the tippity top men. You're not actually going to say that. But when you do that, and that does something for his ego, now he feels like, okay, I should be with a woman like this, a woman that has standards, because none of these bum men can even be with her. And yes, it's a little bit of a, ego thing with men, right? And the way that they want to look down on other men beneath them. But at the end of the day, it works for you and it'll work for you to get the treatment that you want. Please don't make the mistake of, having and allowing bum men from your past to be able to access you in any capacity.